Everyone tells you to be yourself. But what does that even mean nowadays? When every version of you exists somewhere online, you scroll through your feed and see people being themselves too. Confidently, effortlessly, perfectly. Their authenticity looks rehearsed, their vulnerability feels branded. And you start wondering, am I expressing who I am or who I think I'm supposed to be? Psychologists have been asking a similar question for decades. In 1959, the sociologist Irving Goffman compared human behavior to a stage performance. He wrote that people wear masks depending on who they're with, at work, with friends, with strangers. But in the digital age, those masks have multiplied. Now you're performing for hundreds, maybe thousands of invisible audiences, all at once. Before the internet, identity formed through experience. It grew slowly in private moments, trial, error, silence. Now, identity forms through exposure. It grows in public, shaped by reactions, likes, and algorithms that decide what version of you the world sees. Every post is a small audition. Every like is approval. Every scroll is data fed into a system that learns you and then teaches you who to be. And the more you post, the more you train that system. You think you're expressing yourself, but in reality, the algorithm is expressing itself through you. The algorithmic prison isn't a physical cage. It's a psychological one, built out of attention, validation, and feedback loops. When your brain releases dopamine for every notification, your sense of self starts to orbit around the machine that feeds it. In 2021, neuroscientists from Harvard and Stanford ran a study on social media validation. They found that receiving digital feedback activates the same neural circuits as receiving money or physical affection. In other words, your brain doesn't distinguish between being loved and being liked. It just learns that one is faster. So you adapt. You begin optimizing your personality for performance without realizing it. You post what gets engagement, not what feels true. You avoid silence because silence means invisibility. Slowly, your identity fractures. One version exists offline, quiet, uncertain, human. Another version exists online, polished, reactive, algorithmically fine-tuned. And the more those two drift apart, the more anxiety grows between them. The psychiatrist Carl Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." In the algorithmic era, that terror multiplies. Because the self you're trying to accept keeps changing to fit what works online. It's like being trapped in a hall of mirrors. Every reflection looks like you, but slightly altered, stretched, filtered, more engaging. And after a while, you forget what your unedited reflection ever looked like. You start living for reaction instead of reality. Your internal compass gets replaced by a digital scoreboard. Likes, views, followers. And once you start chasing those numbers, you can never catch them, because they move faster than your sense of worth can keep up. That's the hidden design. The algorithm rewards movement, not meaning. It thrives on keeping you in a state of half-fulfillment, satisfied enough to stay, empty enough to scroll again. You become a participant in your own simulation, a digital ghost wearing a curated face. And the scariest part? You feel productive while it's happening. Each post, each reply, each tiny burst of dopamine gives the illusion of growth. But it's synthetic growth, horizontal, not vertical. It expands your exposure, not your depth. In psychological terms, this is called ego inflation, the expansion of self-image without internal development. It feels like confidence, but it's built on mirrors. And when those mirrors break, when your posts flop, your views drop, your relevance fades, so does your sense of self. That's why digital burnout feels existential, because when your online self collapses, it takes your identity with it. You don't just lose followers, you lose the version of you that existed for them. In one Stanford experiment, participants deprived of social media for only 7 days reported a 30% increase in self-clarity. They described feeling more like themselves again. The absence of feedback allowed their brains to reset, to relearn who they were without applause. You can't build a true self while constantly performing one, because real identity isn't visible. It's built in the dark, in silence, effort, failure, reflection. But we've been trained to fear the dark, to fear being unseen. So we cling to visibility like oxygen, unaware that it's suffocating us. The irony is, the more you try to be seen, the less you're truly visible. Because the self you're showing isn't you. It's the echo of attention bouncing back through a machine. And once you start mistaking that echo for your voice, you've already lost control of who you are. Reclaiming your identity doesn't start with deleting social media. It starts with remembering what it feels like to exist without an audience. To return to wholeness, you have to break the mirror. Not by retreating from the world, but by looking at yourself without filters, both digital and psychological. The first step is awareness. Hungarian psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who coined the concept of flow, said that true fulfillment comes from complete immersion in the present moment. Not from being seen doing something, but from doing it so deeply that you forget yourself entirely. When was the last time you were so focused that you forgot to check your phone? So absorbed that you forgot to care how you looked doing it? That's the state where the real self lives, not in reflection, but in presence. But presence can't survive in constant noise. That's why silence is so powerful. It's the detox of identity. Neuroscientists have found that silence for even 2 hours a day stimulates the growth of new brain cells in the hippocampus, the region tied to memory and emotional balance. In silence, the nervous system repairs itself. In stillness, the fragmented self starts to reconnect. That's the real self-improvement, the internal kind. Not sculpting your jawline, but sculpting your attention. Not building your image, but building your awareness. Because identity isn't something you construct, it's something you uncover. It's what's left when you stop editing, start doing things that don't scale, read without posting your thoughts, train without recording it, live without explaining it. Each time you do, you weaken the algorithmic self and strengthen the real one. And that's when life starts to feel whole again. Because wholeness isn't about adding more, it's about removing what's artificial. You'll notice that reality feels heavier, slower, but richer. Conversations deepen. Work feels meaningful again. You don't chase attention. Attention finds you. In a study from the University of Virginia, participants left alone with their thoughts for just 15 minutes preferred to shock themselves rather than sit in silence. That's how far we've drifted from inner peace. But if you can resist that impulse to escape, to scroll, to stimulate, you start rewiring your nervous system back to its natural rhythm. And something unexpected happens when you slow down. The world starts revealing its detail again. Colors look fuller. Time feels wider. You realize that meaning was never gone. It was just buried under overstimulation. The goal isn't to disappear from the digital world. It's to return to it with sovereignty, where your attention belongs to you again. You are not a brand. You are not your analytics. You are not the version of yourself that performs best. You are the observer behind all of it, the quiet witness that existed before the noise and will exist after it. So when the algorithm demands your attention, offer it your silence. When it asks for your emotions, offer it stillness. When it feeds you validation, feed yourself meaning instead. Because that's how you win the invisible war for your mind. Not by fighting the system, but by remembering you were never built for it. You were built for reality. For real faces, real voices, real moments that aren't optimized for engagement. You were built to be, not to perform. And the day you remember that, when you no longer need to prove your existence through pixels or praise, that's when you become whole again. The return to wholeness isn't loud. It's not a revelation or a viral post. It's a quiet shift, a gentle reconnection with the parts of you that were waiting beneath the noise. So stop searching for the perfect version of yourself. You don't need to become anything. You just need to remember the self that existed before the algorithm told you who to be. That's the real you. Unoptimized, unfiltered, unmeasured, alive. And once you meet that version again, you'll never want to trade it for approval. Because for the first time, you'll feel something the algorithm can't manufacture: peace.